everyone. I'm Tiffany Eddy.
And I'm Tom Praisall.
And thank you so much for joining us for the latest episode of
Anything But Politics,
where we discuss the personal lives of political figures and business leaders, about their what makes them tick and their experiences, and really not about policy, but about the personal side. So
yeah, and we have the pleasure today of being joined by a senator in her 5th term in the New Hampshire Senate. And talk about a life well lived. She represents the western part of the state down to the Connecticut River. And, I think you've served probably on most of, if not all of the committees in the Senate, but has really, for the last 10 years, been a force in the Senate. And so we want to welcome Senator Ruth Ward.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited that you're here, too. And so, I sense a little bit of an accent, and so I know you're not a New Hampshire native per se, but it may be a little further than just Massachusetts, but maybe by way of Massachusetts.
You want me to go way, way, way back?
Let's go as far back as you're willing to go.
would love to.
That's fine. Actually, I was born in China.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Well, that's much further
That's
than
far back.
Massachusetts.
It is
Well,
further
it
back.
depends. I mean, Mass is kind of
Yeah.
funky sometimes, but
My parents were missionaries in China, and they went out there, and my father was killed when I was about 7.5. My mother was still pregnant with, she was pregnant with my youngest brother, her 5th child, and the communists were moving in, and we had to get out of wherever we were, so Peking was the next city. Stayed there for, I think, about 2 years until the war was over. And I remember when the American airplanes came flying in over Peking, I climbed up in the roof of a little shed that was right next to the place where we lived, and to watch the airplanes coming in. I really had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
And how
I
old?
was not, pardon?
I'm sorry, how old were you?
About 7.5.
Okay.
Yeah. So the thing was that we were pretty sheltered. My parents, we didn't know very much. We had no radio at all because no communication was allowed. So any news that we got came from somebody who heard from somebody and had an underground radio. We could find out a little bit, but the communication was very bad. So at the end, in Peking, when the war was over, the British decided they were going to take their Brits back to England with them. And they had some space in the boat, so they offered it to some of the Western people who were there. There were Swedes, Norwegians, Danes. So we were offered a ride from, I think, Tianjin down to Singapore. And in Singapore, they announced that all the males had to get off, but the women and the children could stay on. So I had a 7-week boat trip on a big ocean liner. It actually was a boat that was sort of made over to accommodate all kinds of people. And it took 7 weeks to get to Southampton in England. And from there, we took a train to London, and London, a 3-day trip on the North Sea over to Denmark, and then rail over Denmark into Sweden, and where I was met by my aunt.
Wow. Well, first of all, there's a lot to unpack there. That's a lot that happened. So let's go piece by piece.
Okay.
So you're born in China.
Yes.
And what year? If you don't have to say the year, but it was during the Communist Revolution.
It was during the World War II. So I don't know when the Communist Revolution took place, but it was the fight between the Japanese and the Chinese.
Okay.
In the World War II, and the Chinese and the Japanese were fighting all the time. And when you never knew who was commandeering a particular area, because there was always this change in power.
But you said, so what brought your parents to China? I know you said they were missionaries, but
They absolutely were missionaries. They wanted to be in China, both of them, and convert people from Buddhism, I guess, to Christianity.
Wow. And was, not to ask an indelicate question, but you mentioned your father passed when you were 7. Was that part of the political unrest, or?
He was shot down.
Oh, he was?
Yes. We were staying at a small village because we had to move from the village where we usually stayed. And he had gone by on the bicycle to visit with them and talk to them and find out what was going on. And on the way home, just outside the wall of the compound, because all the villages had big walls with the big ports.
Yeah, sure.
Somebody shot him down because supposedly they thought he was Japanese, but anyhow, he was shot down. So,
Wow.
and that left my mother with 4 kids and
That's
on
a
the
lot.
way. So,
That's
Yeah.
a lot. 4
Yep.
kids
Yep.
for her. And with that having just happened. And so,
And a baby.
yeah, at some point, I'm sure immediately it was like, we got to get out of here.
we had to, yeah, because the communists came in every day. They were in there asking questions, and Mother didn't want any one of us take part of it because it was very important to remember to give the same answer every time.
Sure.
So,
Consistency.
yeah, so we did not. Did we? Yeah, I guess we were shielded. The parents pretty much said, there's no kids involved. We stayed inside while they were out there talking. So.
And so when you were finally able to leave, you were talking about being on this ocean liner. Was it fancy or was it?
Oh, no. It was a ship, that container ship. But they had taken everything out so that, the underside was just bunk beds. Got 3 or 4 beds.
So it was designed to get.
They made it so that it could take all of these people back. And my mother was lucky she got a place above the deck with my youngest brother. So she and he were up there. The rest of us stayed downstairs. We knew some people, they kept an eye on us.
So how often were you downstairs? I mean, were you allowed up on the deck?
Oh, yeah,
or-
we could move around. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
I didn't know if you were being,
no.
if it was
No.
secret, if you weren't supposed to be on the
No.
ship or.
No, we were there. We could move around
Okay.
on the ship and move around. And sometimes we would go up and see Mother and, things like that. So.
But then you'd go back down. Now, was it? Were there any challenges? Was it kind of smooth sailing, so to speak, or were there challenges being on board the boat?
Well, there were minesweepers in front of the boat.
What's that look like? I
Yeah.
can't even imagine.
Well, you have the big ship going down, and if they have minesweepers ahead of them to take a look and see if there are any mines bobbing up and down on the water, because in that case they had to get rid of them before the boat would hit them.
That's crazy. And you're witnessing all of this at the age of 7.
Yes, 7.5, 8 maybe at that point. So.
Wow.
And-
So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I just there's so many things to unpack. Did you feel safe? I mean, was food a problem?
On the boat?
Yeah, were you well fed?
Food was a problem on the boat. We had plenty to eat, but some of the stuff was pretty old. And
Sure.
we'd have had oatmeal in the morning, and I remember little sort of worms were sort of floating around in the milk, but you ate it. I don't remember much. We were fed. There was not probably gourmet meals, but we had plenty to eat.
But you knew what the goal was, and the goal was to get to England and get out of there.
Right, and the goal was to get back to Sweden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where your parents were from, Sweden.
Yes.
So you get to England, and you get off, and what does that look like? I mean, what was the financial situation to be able to say, okay, we're back in friendly territory, but we need to get home?
Everything was arranged. I don't know who. I think the Red Cross did a lot, and I think that the English government did a lot because they had many of their own people. So everything, I obviously didn't know anything about the finances, but
Yeah.
there was no problem moving from one place to another. Everything was taken care of. We went from there to the train that would take us to London. So, and the Red Cross met us, and we got a lot of food and goodies from the Red Cross.
Yeah.
Probably happy to feel safe at that point.
I never felt. I think I was too young to really be scared because I really didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big part of it.
And it says something about your mom, too, that she was able to shield,
Yes,
all of you
yeah.
from having to feel scared.
Right.
And having to feel.
She was incredible. So,
Yeah.
and she took care of us.
So she got you to Sweden, and you grew up in Sweden?
Yes, we came into the southern part of Sweden, which is Skåne and Malmö, where they had a big port. Because from London, we went to Denmark, and then train from Denmark to Copenhagen. And then the ferry from Copenhagen over to Malmö. And that was the first time I saw ice. I'd never seen ice and snow before either.
Oh, wow.
You know, the winters in China were very cold, but there was never any snow. There was ice. You know, people could skate, and I could never figure out how they could skate on frozen water. It was just like, what is this thing here? But
where did you take us?
so, and then we moved further up where my aunt was, closer to Gothenburg, so that's where I spent most of my time, in the Gothenburg area, before I came over here.
And then what, I'm just so curious, I've got a million questions, but I guess my first one would be, what motivated you to leave Sweden then and come over to the United States?
Well, I had been working, and like so many young people, you like to find somebody that you can go out with, and it was very limited. I felt that every half-decent guy was taken care of by somebody.
Yeah.
So I figured let me get out of here and see if I can do something different.
So you were looking for a guy.
That was part of it,
Okay.
but also I needed to have a total break with whatever else had been going on and just sort of start from scratch.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So how did you get to the United States, and what were you studying at that point? What was your area of expertise?
I wasn't studying anything. I had been working as a
She was studying how to find a man, Tiffany.
med tech. So I had a job. I came over as an exchange student.
Okay.
Because I had worked several years in the bacteriology and respiratory physiology. And I got a guy came over from Boston to Gothenburg. And he had this idea about how about an exchange program. One of you can go over to Boston to Children's Hospital, and we'll have one from the Children's Hospital come over here. And we were doing lung capacity, heart catheterizations, and all those kinds of things. So it started out with a person who has seniority, and then eventually it came down to me, and I said, sure, I'll go.
Yeah.
And
Was Boston at that time considered, like we have the best hospital, or I say we, I guess that's my Massachusetts roots coming out, but Boston has some of the best hospitals in the world. At that time, was it the same?
I think it was the same,
Yeah.
yes. This guy happened to come from Children's Hospital and knew the director of the heart catheterization lab, so that's where I ended up. We did heart catheterizations on newborn babes and children, 2, sometimes 3 a day, and that's what I did at Children's.
And then you decided not to go back to Sweden at the end of your term?
I asked for an extension of my visa because I wanted to stay a little longer. And by that time, I also met somebody, and actually a group of people that were called the Lazy Eight. They had all kinds
And now you represent District 8. How funny is that?
And they would ski, and they would do all kinds of things. I had parties in the summertime. So that's where I learned to ski.
Okay.
Yeah. So I decided to learn how to ski.
And we're talking downhill?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
No, downhill. Cross country, you really don't have to learn. You just put the skis on and go.
And slide.
So you decided to stick around. You're hanging out with the Lazy Eight, and this attractive person catches your eye.
Yes. And eventually we got married, and then then my visa ran out. No, not my visa ran out. I didn't have a job anymore. The gal who came over to Gothenburg, I don't know what happened to her. She didn't come back either. So
she's still over there.
I have no idea where she is. But anyhow, I got married and had 3 children, not 9, 3. And we moved from Boston out to Lincoln, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Because we're supposed to have good schools, so the kids went there. And
And you have 3 kids, so what's the breakdown of kids? You've got...
one son and 2 daughters.
Okay.
Yeah.
They wild?
They're wild.
Were they wild?
They were just typical kids, I think. You
Yeah.
know, when you talked about being 16 years old and always hungry, I was, Mom, there's nothing to eat.
Yeah.
That was a typical thing.
You know what? I think that exists today because that's what my kids are always saying. And I'm like, no, the fridge is full. There's food right there.
Right.
But they don't like it.
It's never what we want.
Yeah, I know. And then they
right,
go,
so-
can we go to McDonald's? But anyway, sorry, I interrupt.
No, so then we moved. We lived in Lincoln and moved from one house to another house. Then in '89, my husband died. He was diagnosed with gastric CA and got 3 months to live.
Oh, God.
Which was
Wow.
really fast. So then he died. And
At this point in '89, what are you doing, right? Like aside from you're
I'm
raising the
working
children, but
by that time I had gone back to school, and I had got my RN, and I was working as a nurse at the Newton Wellesley Hospital.
and what was your specialty area?
Well, at that point I was just working as a floor nurse, and I did a lot of diabetes instruction, management instruction. Then I decided that I really needed a little bit more, so I went for my master's degree
Oh, wow.
in nursing. And then became a nurse practitioner, and then worked at the outpatient department at Newton Wellesley Hospital as an NP, seeing patients and doing things.
Which is super. I mean, that's got to be super helpful for you, given you've got young kids and your husband passes away, but you have the ability to still provide for the family and.
That was one of the reasons I wanted to get back to work. But even though I had worked as a med tech, I didn't have the degree. You can't get very far here without a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So I decided rather than getting a degree in medical technology, I took a look and decided that I'd always wanted to be a nurse. But a guy that I was very much interested in always said, only girls with broken hearts would ever consider nursing.
Really?
Really? Yeah, I never heard
Because
that.
I guess you give yourself, you just take
Sure.
care of other people. So I decided, no, it's not going to be a nurse.
There's also an irony, too, an odd irony about your life that your dad is assassinated when you're 7 years old, and then later in life you have your own kids, and your husband, passes as well, and so.
Yeah, but he at least passed from natural causes. So,
True.
yeah. It was, I was a nurse and I was working, and I could understand what was going on, and I would go out to the rounds and listen to what they were saying, but the progression of what the reality was, and so I knew what was going on. So, but when he died in '89, the kids were out of college. So,
Oh, they were
Okay,
okay.
so they were
That's
older.
good.
oh yeah,
Okay.
they came up. So.
So then I understand that we have a little bit of a connection because I was in TV for a long time, but you ended up, your second husband was someone who was involved in television down in the Boston market.
Yeah, but that was something I found out afterwards.
Okay.
Oh, so how'd you meet him?
Yeah, so let's hear that story.
On the
I
ski
mean-
slopes?
No, it's really funny because I had reservations out at Utah that I've been going to Utah for years to ski for 2 weeks. I was going out there on, I guess it was a Delta flight, and I always have a window seat because I hate to get up and people need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in my window seat, and this woman comes and says, "I'm sorry," she said, "you have my seat." And I said, "No, this is mine." And the stewardess came, and flight attendant, stewardess came. And she said, "Would you mind moving?" And I said, "Well, I'm fine." So they moved me way back,
Ooh.
almost on the end of the plane in an aisle seat. And I never have an aisle seat. So I'm sitting there, and they're serving breakfast, and I didn't quite finish everything else. So I was sitting there, and I hear this voice. "How come you haven't eaten your breakfast? Don't you know about the starving children in India?"
Get out.
And I look up and I said, "I always thought it was the starving children in Africa." That's how our conversation started.
And was he sitting next to you or
No,
across
he was
the
sitting way up someplace. I think he had a middle seat, a window seat, or
He
something.
was just
but he
out
was
for a
just
walk
getting
and
up,
saw
walking.
you and said, I gotta go.
No,
I gotta go
he
harass
saw my
that girl.
unfinished plate, and decided, because he always talks, he can never leave anything. So that's how it started. And we just chatted, and then they were going to serve another meal, And the flight attendant came and said, would you mind moving to the back because we need to serve. So we stood there until time was coming to land in Salt Lake City. And we all had to sit down.
So was he out there to ski as well? Did you continue the
He was out there to
conversations?
ski with another group of people. And
Okay.
he was going actually to, I can't remember the name of the place, but he was going somewhere else. I was going to stay in Utah and ski Alta. So I knew he was going to ask me for my phone, so I had a card prepared with my name and the phone number.
And he asked.
And yes, Wes, and he hung back. He didn't go out quite then when he should have. And he said, how about if I give you a call? And I said, fine. And he said, how do I know you? How do I know? And I gave him my business card. And he said, well, you don't want me to call you at the hospital, do you? And I said, just flipped it over. And then my home phone was on it. So
Us men, we're simple creatures, right? You know,
That's right.
we don't look at both sides of the business card.
And this is back when it was probably landlines and not cell phones and whatnot.
landlines, that's
Yeah.
right. Although I was very lucky, I got one of those early satellite phones for $10 a month.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Big black box,
Yeah.
Did it have a suitcase that you had to carry it around
just
with?
about, but it was pretty heavy.
Yeah. Remember those back in the day.
But the price was right.
That is a good price.
So. Anyhow, that's how we met.
So did you see him in Utah or did you wait till you came back to Massachusetts?
I didn't see him in Utah because I was saying that he was going somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
So I skied. I had a wonderful time. And then when I came back, and I think I was probably asleep or something, and the phone rings. And he's a voice saying, I thought I'll get hold of you and said, well, come back. And I said, well, thanks for waking me up. So
All right. So he comes back, you get married, and now obviously you both were still in Massachusetts.
yes,
But eventually, I think you said he had 6 kids?
6 daughters, yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so you do have
That's a lot
9,
of girls.
including your stepchildren. And but
You know, they were grown ups when I married him.
Yeah,
so
that's
I
a good point.
never felt like I was their mother.
you just had to remember the
They
names.
didn't need me as a mother.
Yeah.
So,
But so what made you come to New Hampshire? And when did you come to New Hampshire?
came to New Hampshire
And why that part of New Hampshire?
it had to be a dark sky because he was interested in stargazing.
Yeah.
So
no
we
light
looked-
pollution. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we looked around and he'd found the area of where we live now as being pretty dark. And I happened to know some people who lived in that town. And I scoured the papers and we found this lot on Route 123 and bought it. Went up there and then we surveyed it with the surveying equipment and we just checked out, you know, where the hills were and because it was totally wooded. So
And then you built a house.
then we built the house.
And you've been
so
there ever
he
since.
and I and my son-in-law and Fred's cousin, we built the house. So
And when you say he and I, there's not a doubt in my mind that you were out there with the saws, the hammers, the nails.
that's true.
Yeah.
I climbed it and I know how to use it.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Hope to use, and I know exactly where the electric lines are in the house
Yeah.
because we put them in.
So you were very hands-on. So, and that was how many years ago?
We moved in 95.
Okay. So you've been here.
I moved in a little ahead of time. The house wasn't quite finished, but it was enough. So I was about to renew my license for Massachusetts, and I said, I'm not going to go through that
Yeah.
to renew my car registration, only to change it. So I moved up, and we sold the house that I had in Lincoln and moved up here. So I've been here since November 95.
And you were retired at that point? Or
Yeah.
were you still
well,
working?
I still work. I did
If you've ever really retired.
I did some work for the public health department in Massachusetts, and I did some diabetes instruction for some places up in around Jamaica Plain.
Okay.
And other than that, then I sort of stopped. I looked to see if I could work in New Hampshire, but New Hampshire, in its infinite wisdom, decided I was not adequately prepared. I had I had a nurse practitioner license in adult nursing, but they said my master's was in geriatric nursing. I didn't qualify. So I could go to Rivier and take a course there, and I decided no.
Yeah.
So I did some other things instead.
That makes sense. Now, do you guys have romantic evenings where you go outside and gaze up at the stars since you're out there and there's no light pollution?
No.
No?
No. Actually, there is light pollution now because Pat's Peak has a lot of lights on in the wintertime.
Oh, yeah, they do. They do.
And you can just see the sky glow. So
Yeah, I see that from the other side on the Concord Hopkinton side.
Yeah.
It's pretty bright.
no. But we have been out sitting there out watching the meteor showers and stuff like that.
Oh,
All right,
that's
I've got a very important question. What's your favorite constellation? Because I have one.
You have one.
Yeah, I love Orion.
Me too.
And I think the only reason I like Orion is because it's the easiest one to find.
You
That's
like
the
his
only one
belt.
you can find.
Yeah. Every
I'm
once in a
thinking-
while, we'll be driving and I'll say, oh, I think that's the Big Dipper right there.
Yeah.
And she'll be like, how can you tell? I'm like, oh, we've already passed it.
I think I like that first one that comes out. Is that Venus that comes out early?
Yeah, I think Venus does come out early, yeah.
Maybe.
It's a planet, so.
And there was recently, I think all the planets were in alignment
Yeah.
in the sky.
I read about that, yeah.
And too bad Pat's Peak, it's in the winter, so too much light pollution, you couldn't
Well,
see him.
Fred doesn't do very much observing anymore. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But we do love Pat's Peak in case they want to sponsor the podcast.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love Pat's Peak. I
Great
mean,
skiing.
I have been there many times, snowboarding, skiing. Love me some Pat's Peak.
The bar.
Yeah, après ski.
It's a
Après-
nice little mountain.
Yeah.
It is.
I think I've skied that once. I skied from the left to the right and the right to the left and back, and I said, no, where else? It's there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, after Europe, too, it's probably a little bit different.
yeah.
But you're a cross-country skier, is that correct?
Yeah, I can ski cross country.
Do you still actively? Because I know,
I haven't done anything. Anything. I haven't done downhill. I haven't done cross country skiing. Occasionally, I have been known to put my snowshoes on and go out for a walk in the woods.
yeah. Well, that was going to be my question because I know you were very active in the trails. I think
Yep.
you had at one point adopted a trail to keep it clean.
Yes.
But I've seen pictures of you at the top of Mount Washington.
Yeah.
So I know you love the outdoors. So
I've climbed all the 4,000 footers.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. Many of them more than once.
yeah.
I climbed them with my husband, and then I climbed them with the kids, and then I've climbed them again. So
What's your favorite?
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah. I beat you to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. There are so many really nice ones. I guess I like to hike up to Mount Washington, and I have done that from both the Crawford Notch and the other side where the train comes, going up that several times. I participated in the raising money for the observatory. Reach the peak, seek the peak.
Oh, is
Yeah.
that the race that goes up to?
Well, yeah, that's a race, but there was just a matter of getting up there.
Yeah, that's
so,
challenging.
yeah.
That
It
is-
is.
That's
And
a,
you see, that you think you're almost there, and then you're not. No, but that's a nice one. But I've stayed up, go from Crawford, you stay over at the Lakes of the Cloud Hut, and you can hike from there also. So,
that's beautiful.
yeah.
So how did, I guess, and I know that you've done different things in the community, but what was it that prompted you to eventually want to run for Senate?
I was on the ZBA and the planning board for about 10 years. And I actually, at that point, I had learned a little bit about the New Hampshire politics, and I thought I should try to do something. So I ran for the House against Dan Eaton, who is quite well known and has been in the House just
It's
about
a pretty
forever.
blue district, too.
Yeah. Of course, I didn't win. But then I thought, what's sort of interesting. But on the other hand, I did no work whatsoever. I didn't know anything. Nobody told me what to do. So I thought if I send out a postcard and talk to a couple of people, that should be fine.
Yeah.
And well, it turns out that's not sufficient. So then then this seat opened up.
I think Jerry Little became the
Bank
banking
commissioner.
commissioner.
Yeah. But he was only there for 1 year. Bob Odell had been there for 10
Ever,
years
yeah.
before him. And so the gals called me up and said, how about running for this seat? And I said, you got to be kidding. I said, I can't do that. He said, oh, no, that seat is open, and we'll help you. And I said, how? He said, well, we'll get you somebody who can tell you what to do and help you to do this thing. And I said, okay, if you help me, then I'll do it. I had met them when I was doing a little bit of work for Carly Fiorina.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
So I gotten to know a couple of them, and they were very active in politics, So that's how that started.
I did work for the Carly Fiorina campaign when she was running for president
Uh-huh.
back in the day. So we're probably working together. We didn't even realize it.
We might have done that, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's got to
Carrie
be.
Marsh was one of them.
Yeah, Carrie. And
yeah.
didn't Deirdre, did she work?
Yes, Deidre, and
Jane Millerick was part of that.
the gal with the double name, Bailey, Yvonne.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Yvonne.
Yes, I know you're talking about. She was a state rep for a number of years.
Right.
But so it must have been a daunting task, right? To
was.
go from sending out a couple postcards to now running for the New Hampshire Senate. But the Ruth Ward I know never backs down from a challenge.
So they invited me to meet this person who they thought could help me, and it was Carrie Marsh, Chuck, and I, and this guy called Pericles.
Yeah.
And we chatted, and finally at the end I said, well, so what are you going to do? Are you going to help me or not? And he says, oh, okay, I'll do that. So
Yeah.
we set up an appointment, and I met with him, and I had to have a stump speech.
Yep.
And I sat down. He said, okay, get up. Say it again. And I must have gone up and down 5 or 6 times to get this stump speech prepared and saying it without faltering. So, and that's how the whole thing started.
Yeah.
And then knock on doors. That was hard work.
Yeah.
That's hard work.
I bet.
Yeah, so.
But it's fun, right? Because you get to meet a
Yeah,
lot of people and you hear about what the
certainly do.
issues are.
Yeah, you certainly do, and but then you always need somebody who can drive with you, because I don't like to drive and look for the numbers at the same time.
Yeah.
So and then I won. I had a primary.
Yep. I remember.
Mm-hmm.
But you won, and then
But how many votes?
I don't remember how many votes you won by.
9.
Was it only 9?
Wow.
9 votes.
Wow.
That's. And I'm assuming there was a recount with 9 votes.
Yes, there was a recount.
So
we
they
both lost the vote. It was still 9.
Yeah.
And I guess he decided he wasn't going to challenge me anymore, so he said, fine, we'll do that. So
And what's the best part about being in the Senate?
it's a good group of people, and I think that I have learned so many things, because you get involved with the bills and they put you on committees, and there are things that you know nothing about. They put me on education for day one. That's where I have
That's a
been.
tough committee,
Education and transportation. I've been on those 2 committees.
especially given your background. You would think you would be more geared toward health and human
Yeah,
services.
But I felt I had had enough of it. I didn't want
Yeah.
to deal with bills. But I still do it now, obviously, since we're voting on some of those things. And I feel that I have a pretty good understanding on what the issues are, just because of my experience in the healthcare field.
But you know what's interesting? So you said day one you were put on education and transportation.
Yep. They never took me off.
Yeah, I was going to say, you are still on those committees.
I am still on those committees. And education, obviously, didn't have a degree in education, but I have learned so much
Sure.
about the whole school system, the funding mechanism, and all the issues that take place in education that I would not have known if I had not been a senator. And it's the same with transportation, but that's some things in transportation. That's, I think, fairly straightforward. It's not
Yeah.
huge controversial issues.
No. However, I will say, I have a question for you.
Okay?
Did you solve the issue that prevented you from becoming a nurse in New Hampshire?
No, I didn't pursue it.
No, but they have solved it, right?
I don't
I
know.
don't believe it's an issue anymore.
Maybe not.
Legislatively?
Yeah.
Maybe not. So, but it was just like when there's bureaucracy.
Yeah.
You have a piece saying that you have done that, even you have practiced in one area forever. And I could still do geriatric nursing, and I still understand it, but that was not I didn't have the right piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, I feel pretty confident saying I think we fixed that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I should do now is to read.
Yeah.
Now you
so
can go
so you can
back
go
and be-
back and
yeah.
be a nurse.
That's
You know?
right.
Because you have so much free time.
That's right.
But I will say, once a nurse, always a nurse. And I say that because, my grandmother was a nurse. And then when my grandfather passed away, she went and volunteered in the same department in the hospital that she worked in before. So once a nurse, always a
Yeah.
nurse.
I mean, there are certain things you learn, and it just becomes part of you, and you just react a certain way to things. So.
Yeah. So I have a question. So we spent a lot of time talking about, you spent time in Sweden. Obviously, you spent time in China, Sweden. Then you came to the United States. Do you go back to Sweden at all? Do you
Oh,
still
I've
have,
been back many times.
Do you still have family over there?
Right now, I only have a brother.
Okay.
My mother has died, and two of my brothers have died. But I do go back, and I am hoping to see my brother this summer. I was going back, and I was sitting in the lounge when they called me and said, you can't go. And I said, why not? Because you can't get into Sweden because you don't, that was during COVID.
Oh, wow.
He said, you can stay in Munich if you want, but you can't get from Munich to Sweden. So
Yeah.
I turned around and went back home.
Oh, wow.
That was my last effort, but I do have that one brother, and he just lost his wife, so I'll see him.
Want to get over there?
That's
And
good.
I have a sister in Wisconsin.
Like,
Oh, so
get a-
she came to the United States too?
Yeah, after I came, she came over.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering, because you have the nurse experience, so obviously you know how to help people. And we had Senator Sue Prentice on, and she has EMT experience. Have you ever kind of been called into action where you were able to use those skills to help make a difference?
Not really.
No.
No. And I've never been in an accident, so kind of thing where I was needed to do anything. But I tell you, when I used to have tickets to the Boston Symphony, and I was always, every time I went in and sat in my seat, I was always looking around to see where should I hold this person if something happens.
Yeah.
Where's the easiest way to get somebody out of their seat? So I'm sort of always looking at that.
Yeah, well, that's just like I know a bunch of firefighters who every room they go in, they look for the exits,
Yeah.
right?
Training. So you've had such an incredible life. I mean, China through England to Sweden to the United States to Massachusetts to New Hampshire. I mean, what an incredible life story.
Sometimes I have a hard time remembering, or not remembering, but thinking that I've been all of those places.
I mean, it's remarkable. And do people ever, because I do detect like a slight accent sometimes, say, hey, where are you from?
Yeah, they do.
And then you say, Sweden, right?
Yeah, Sweden.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you travel a lot, like outside of Sweden, like as in your adult life? Did you do a lot? Because
I've been to Australia.
Did
I've
you like
been
it?
to Germany.
How big are the spiders in Australia? I hear they're huge.
I didn't see one of them. That was on a solar eclipse trip.
Oh, wow.
Oh wow, is right.
To go see like the full
The
eclipse?
solar eclipse, yeah.
Wow.
And I've been to, I think it was Kentucky for another solar eclipse, and I have that picture in my office.
Did you see the one here that just took place?
No, I didn't bother with that.
Are you kidding? So you went all the way to Australia? Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah, spent a week in Australia. It would be 10 days or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it was incredible scenery. Did
Yeah.
whatever hiking we could do, we did that, and saw some of the area. But obviously, it's another big country, and it'd be fun to go back and take a look at the rest of it.
Are you going to go to the upcoming eclipse? I believe it's going to be in like Spain, Portugal in a year or something like
I
that.
don't know. I'll have to ask.
Okay. Are you an eclipse seeker?
I am not. My husband was.
Oh, okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Meteorologist.
Yes. So if he wants to go and look at it, I'll go with him. But
That's great. So now outside, we talked about some cross country skiing, snowshoeing, downhill skiing. I also know, I believe, you are a master weaver.
that's true. I have a Master Weaver certificate.
Another
And I
piece of
have
paper.
Another piece of paper, and I'm juried into the league.
So what does that mean to be juried into the League of New Hampshire
It means that
Craftsmen?
you have to show your work, and it has to be good enough to be sold in the league.
So what exactly? Help me understand when you say weaving. is it like rugs? Is it tapestry? Or am I like out in left field and it's
No,
none of those
you're
things?
not out. The tapestry is something very different.
Okay.
You have do you know what a warp is?
No.
Okay.
To be honest, no.
What is a
Warp
warp
speed?
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. I hear James Kirk going, warp speed, Scotty.
That's right. The warp is the thing, the big long thing.
Okay.
And the weft is the thing that goes back and forth.
Okay.
On a regular weaving, on a loom, you change the shed of the shafts that you have because you put the warp through it, and then you can get different openings, and that's where you put the weft through. Tapestry, you have a fixed frame,
Okay.
and you pretty much manually do the pictures that you're going to have, because tapestry is most often pictures.
Okay.
It isn't just like stripes.
Oh, that makes
So
sense.
what did you weave? What was your specialty?
I don't have a specialty. I wove a lot of scarves, table linens. I did a lot of things with overshot weave, which is typically in New Hampshire. This is just a 4-shaft thing, but I have some of those.
And if you're juried, does that mean your work is on display somewhere?
Not on display, but I could sell it. I can put it in the league.
Do you have a website that we should promote or anything?
no.
RuthWard.com.
No, I don't. I have not woven anything since I became a senator. The thing with weaving is that you have to have it. You have to be able to sit at it and have a nice, smooth weave. You can, if you get interrupted, next time you come, that sort of
Yeah, it breaks it
balance
up a
is
little.
gone.
Yeah.
The rhythm.
So what you do when you take something, where you hold it up against the light, and if you see that it isn't, you can see if there are spaces in it.
And
that
that's an indication someone took a break?
could be. So, for example, if you have something like that, you like to be able to stick with it, and stay there
Yeah.
until it's finished.
So if you're weaving, like how long would a weaving session be? Would it be like an hour, 8 hours,
No, it'd be a couple of hours
a
probably.
couple hours? Okay.
But once you get into sort of the swing of things, you don't want to take too long a break, because then you sort of lose that.
That makes sense.
Right.
I think any kind of creation too, your brain starts to really focus, and you don't want to have to go
Right.
away and then come back because it takes so long to get back in that mindset.
And when you talk about the loom will have, the simplest loom is just 2 shafts, one up and one down. One up and one down, and that's probably what your shirt is there, because it's just a very simple weave. You have over,
Yeah.
under, over, under, over, under, the whole way. But if you want to do any patterns, then you need to have more than 2 shafts, unless you do it by hand and pick up something. Once you have, with 4 shafts, you can do a lot of patterns. And what I was mentioning to you earlier on the overshot is you work with 2 yarns. You have a base yarn that goes over, under, and then you have the pattern yarn that comes in another shed. So,
It's fascinating. It's
Yeah.
fascinating how much information you have and how much expertise you have across all of these different fields. I mean, I feel so unaccomplished right now.
Oh, Tom.
well, it's just fun to have different interests, I think.
Yeah.
Just,
Oh, well, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you. I mean, I've learned so much. So thank you so much for your time and
You're very welcome.
your service and coming on the podcast. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, you have a great story, and I've learned things about. I've known you for the 10 years, or you're in your 5th term that you've been in the Senate, and I'm constantly learning new things about you. And I'm going to come to your office and check out that picture
you
of
should.
the
You should.
eclipse.
It's really nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, me too. And I want to see weaving
yeah. Do you have any of your
weaving
artwork?
pictures.
Yeah, actually, I have 2 things that go over the bookcases that I wove.
All right.
We're coming over. Well, thank you, Senator.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Thank you so much for
You're
coming
very
on.
welcome.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody for listening and watching the latest episode of.
Anything but politics.
All right, I'm Tom Praisall, and
I am Tiffany Eddy, and we are broadcasting from our studio in downtown Concord, and we really appreciate you listening. So thank you for joining us.